We need a new perspective, a new paradigm, a whole new way of being, because we are creating a new earth. I believe that. And so it's really wonderful to find things to celebrate, like the puppy dog out there, like each other. Is anyone here celebrating a birthday, an anniversary today? Even an anniversary of last year, September 25th. I mean, we have an anniversary every day, don't we? For something. So there's a lot of good things to celebrate. And there's a story about a couple. They were in their 70s and they were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. And the husband was reminiscing about their 50 years together. And he said to his wife, Mabel, do you remember back when we were first married and we had that tiny little apartment? And one time we had that horrible storm and there was floods all over town and our whole living room flooded and it just destroyed our furniture and we were so upset. Do you remember that, Mabel? But Mabel, you were right by my side. And do you remember about 20 years after that when our whole house burned down? But Mabel, you were right by my side. And gosh, just a couple of years ago, that horrible virus came through and I thought I was going to die. But Mabel, you were right by my side. And he took Mabel's hands and looked deeply into her eyes and said, Mabel, I think you're bad news. So, you know, often we like to blame other people for the things that happen to us that we don't like, don't we? We give our power away. We say it's because of my spouse or my mom or the government or whatever. We always put it out there, but we are always being guided from within. And we don't have to listen to the other people who seemingly do things that we like to blame them for. But I think we all do it because we're human and we're still learning in this life here in the third dimension. But we often think that we are victims, and we are not victims because we do have something called an inner voice that's guiding us. It was a little over 3 months ago. It was June 6th when I opened my emails and I saw that there was an email from a friend of mine named Eric. And I thought, oh, good, because I hadn't heard from Eric for a long time. And I had been thinking over the last couple of years that I should call Eric. Every once in a while, the little thought would go in my mind. I ought to call Eric. And I would always put it off, wait until next week or when I'm done with this or whatever. And I hadn't called him. So I got this email saying that there was a post on his Facebook page. I opened Facebook. And the post actually was not written by Eric. It was written by a friend of his to announce that Eric had died that morning, June 6th. And I was really saddened by that because all of the times that I said to myself, or that I heard this little voice inside saying, why don't you call Eric? And I didn't do it. And how often, and it was something, and you said this morning that you read about putting things off until it's too late. That really struck me because how often do we think to do something and we don't do it until it's too late? So it's really important when that kind of a thought comes to you in your mind to call someone or to go somewhere or do something, pay attention because that may be an important message. So I read the little blurb on his Facebook page and I had wondered whether Eric had finished writing his book. I knew he was writing a book. I also knew that he had cancer, some kind of rare cancer a few years before, and was getting some treatments for it. And I thought that everything was going okay. Unfortunately, it wasn't. Eric and I used to sometimes talk on the phone. He was really impacted by the I Am teachings, the Saint Germain teachings, Ascended Master teachings, which is very much a part of my spirituality. So he would call me up on the phone and we would talk for hours on the certain passages in one of the I Am books. That was the connection I had with Eric. And so when I realized he had finished his book and it came out just really in 2021, a few months before he died, I know he was looking forward to using his book as a platform for his teachings, for his coaching, for his encouraging people. And so I consider his book to be his legacy. It is called Your Brilliant Inner Whisper by Eric Lindbergh. And he gives a lot of stories in his own life about how he learned to really listen to his inner whisper and follow it. Now, we used to call it the still small voice, but it's getting louder and louder in these days, I think, because there's so many things that we can't wait around waiting for the right inspiration. We need to really be paying attention to the inner wisdom that we all have. So I talked to Eric that night, knowing that he would hear me from the other side. I had already ordered his book, and I told him that I would give talks about um, the inner whisper, and that I would dedicate my talks to Eric Lindbergh. So this talk is dedicated to my beloved Eric Lindbergh. So yes, the inner voice is getting louder and louder, isn't it? And it's very easy to dismiss it. It's very easy to say, well, that's just a thought. That's just a random intuition. It's just a hunch or whatever. But these things can really have importance in our lives. There's a silly story that you probably have all heard, but I'm going to tell it anyway, and you can just pretend like you never heard it before. It's a story about a man who's driving his car on a windy mountain road, and we have lots of windy mountain roads around here, right? And I love to drive on those kind of roads, and I like to drive pretty quickly. Yes, I push the pedal to the metal, as they say, or however that goes. So this man was driving up this mountain and these windy roads, and there was no one else to be seen. It seemed pretty safe. And all of a sudden, another car comes careening down the mountain. And as that car gets right next to him, the driver yells out, "Pig." And the guy is incensed. How dare he call me a pig? And so he yelled back at that man, "Jerk." And he probably used a few hand signals too. And he kept on speeding around the corner and ran right into the pig that was in the middle of the road. You've heard that before, right? But okay. Well, good. So the message is, I think it's one of the 4 agreements, is don't take anything personally. So he thought the man was calling him a pig. The man was just trying to alert him that there's a pig in the middle of the road. Slow down. But he didn't slow down. So sometimes we get messages and we misinterpret them. We think they're frivolous, or we think they're an insult, or we think they don't have any meaning. But we need to pay attention, even to things like that. So I thought I would share today a few stories from my life about how the brilliant inner whisper has impacted my life, some experiences. And the first one I want to share is from the year 1996. Now, I had raised my children in Ohio, and I had moved to Colorado by that time, living in Boulder, Colorado for 5 years. At that time, I'd only been living there for a year. And I had become a massage therapist and a whole bunch of other things, but I decided to spend the summer of 96 in Wisconsin, taking some ministerial classes. So I sublet my apartment. I spent the summer in Wisconsin. I still had some time. I went back to Ohio to visit my children and to visit friends. I got together with some friends and a circle of friends, and I noticed that there was one couple that wasn't there. And their names were Marika and David. And my other friends started saying, "Did you hear about Marika and David?" And I said, "No." And they told me the story that Marika had left David and taken off with some guy named Tim, and that they were just traveling west. Now, David and Marika, I thought, were the ideal couple. She's a doctor, he's an engineer. They were very spiritual. They attended the same metaphysical center that I was a student at for 8 years, and they were just the ideal couple. I couldn't believe this happened, but it had. So I heard the story and I kind of let it go and forgot about it. I'm driving west to return to Boulder, but I still had time. So I was going to spend some time in Glacier National Park. How many of you been to Glacier? Isn't that wonderful? I had been there once, but it rained the whole time. So I wanted to go there, and I was happily driving along, I don't know, Route 90 or 80 or whatever that route is. And I'm driving along, and a voiceless voice in my mind said, "Donna, you're going to Yellowstone." And I said, no. I've been to Yellowstone several times. I'm going to Glacier this time. Driving along, that little voice annoying little voice said, Donna, you're going to Yellowstone. I said, no, I'm going to Glacier. I continued driving. Um, and then I find myself, I'm passing this big truck on the highway. And as I'm passing it, I see there's a sign to go that way. If you go that way, you go to Glacier. If you go this way, you go to Yellowstone. And I'm in the lane that has to go that way. I had no choice. Fine, fine, I'll go to Yellowstone. So I've learned, I've learned over the years that if I ask to be guided, excuse me, that I better be listening to my inner guidance. And that's one way that we can be guided, to be in the wrong lane at the wrong time that we think is the wrong lane. So I went to Yellowstone. I got there around midnight. The sign said that all of the campgrounds were filled. I sat in my car all night. Next morning, I figured there's got to be some campsites open. So I went in and set up my campsite. I needed to go to an ATM machine for some cash. And I knew there was a little store right down the road from the campground. So I figured I'm going to go there. Little voice says, Donna, you're going to Old Faithful Lodge. I said, no, there's an ATM machine right down the road. I don't need to go there yet. I'm going there later in the day. But the voice again says, Donna, you are going to the ATM machine at the Old Faithful Lodge. Fine. So I drive 60 miles across the park and go to the ATM machine at Old Faithful Lodge. I'm walking up to the ATM machine, ready to put my card in, and I hear someone say, Donna. And I turn around, and it's Marika. Now, what are the odds of me running into Marika in the middle of Yellowstone? If I had followed what I wanted to do and gone to Glacier, this never would have happened. Now, there was something different. There was something different about Marika's energy that I didn't like. She used to be one of my favorite people, but there was a different energy in her. I didn't even really want to approach her, but of course we hugged. And she took me to meet Tim, and I really didn't want to get near him. And I could tell he felt the same. There was like a wall between us. Anyway, to make a long story short, I made some excuse that I had to get on the road. We couldn't have lunch together. And as I was driving around, I kept getting downloads of a past life that the three of us had had. I don't remember all the details. He had been controlling her and me. And he was still doing that with her, but I just got all these down. I had to keep pulling off the road and writing in my journal all the information that was coming through that I needed to clear for myself. So the reason I tell that story is if I had not listened, if I had found a way to turn around and go to Glacier, I never would have had that encounter. And it turned out to be an important encounter for me. So thank you. That would be very nice. I guess I should have brought it up here. So another time, a similar thing happened, well, in a different way. And this happened a few years before that encounter. I had been working and I had been raising my children in Ohio, working for a Fortune 500 company. I knew that change was coming. I just didn't know what it was. And I happened to be in Colorado. I always went out there for John Denver's WindStar symposiums. And after that, my friend and I were driving around camping for a while, and someone had told me that there was a massage school in Boulder, Colorado. And this was months before they told me that, and I had thought about that, but kind of let that thought go. But as my friend and I were starting to head east after our camp trip, and we were coming through Colorado, I saw the sign for Boulder. And I said, why don't we, since we're this close, why don't we just take a look at this Boulder, Colorado? So we drove into Boulder. I love the town. It happened to be Labor Day, and the massage school was closed, so I couldn't check that out. And we went around town. It was lots of festivities. It was wonderful. As we were getting ready to leave, because we wanted to start heading east so we could make it to the Nebraska border that night, before night, his car started acting funny. Now, you guys, when your car acts funny, you don't find it funny, do you? I know how guys and their cars are. Yeah. It didn't break down, but it was chugging along. And we just knew that we better not get on the road for a long trip until we had it looked at. And it was Labor Day. Everything was closed. So we had to wait until the next day. We took it into a body shop the next day and left it there for a while. And when we got back, the mechanic said, well, there's nothing wrong with your car. And there's no charge. And we washed it for you. And the car was perfect. But that gave us one extra day to check out the massage school. And as soon as I checked that out, I knew, I just had an inner knowing that that was my next step. So after we got back to Ohio, I sold my house. I told my boss I'm leaving for the next semester, and I moved to Boulder, Colorado. Now, I believe that that car, which was acting perfectly all the rest of the time, it had to do that. Something made that car act up so that we would be delayed, so that I would have a chance to experience the massage school. And the 5 years that I lived in Boulder after that were life-changing for me. I would not change that for anything in the world. So things can happen in our lives that we think are just a coincidence, or we think are just a random happening, but there might be a reason for them. So if your car starts acting up, don't worry about it. Get over it, just yeah, it could have a message for you. Pay attention. What was that last song? What was the phrase of the last song? It's all going to be all right. It's all going to be all right, no matter what your car does. One other thing that happened not too long ago, I was asleep. It was about 5 in the morning, 5 or 6 in the morning. I was asleep. All of a sudden I woke up, and the message I got was Phyllis is stressed. Now, Phyllis is my philodendron. I have a tall shelf unit in my living room, and Phyllis sits on top of it, and she just cascades down the whole shelf unit. She's beautiful. For some reason, I suddenly woke up, and I knew she was telling me she was stressed. I went running out into the living room, and sure enough, a lot of her leaves were curled up and yellow. See, I had some little white lights that I put in at Christmas time within her leaves, around her leaves. And it was so pretty. I decided I'm just going to leave them up forever, 24/7. Well, having an electric thing running through a plant really hurts the plant, because the plant is a living thing. Phyllis is a living thing. She told me that day, I'm a living thing. and it was hurting her to have this electrical wire running through her. And I felt really bad for her. I talk to my plants, and I give them names, and I tell them they're beautiful and stuff like that. And she usually is beautiful. So I took out the white lights. I took Phyllis out onto the porch and got rid of all the destroyed leaves, and let her have a little sunshine that day. I believe that, we're all part of life, and plants are a part of life. Maybe not plastic plants, but living plants are a part of life, and they can communicate with us. They tell us when they need water, or they droop, they have ways. So there are so many ways that we are being given messages that can help us in our lives. There are many times, many ways that these messages might come to us. For instance, it could be a gut feeling, could be a hunch. So don't discredit that. It could be something important. Could be what I call the voiceless voice. I didn't really hear a voice saying, Donna, you're going to Yellowstone, but I did. It was voiceless, no sound, but it was there. It could be an animal crosses your path, and maybe that, I don't know, do any of you have the medicine card book? No, nobody has that. Wow, you got to get that book. It's called the medicine cards, but it's all about animals and the message they have for us. And if you have a really vivid dream that includes an animal, could be a black bear, could be a dog, could be a cat, anything. It's really fun to be able to look it up and see what message the animals bring us, because oftentimes it'll be right on with something that you need to hear or that you're experiencing. So, or if an animal crosses your path when you're hiking in the woods or something. It could be a book that someone recommended. Maybe several people mentioned the same book. Pay attention to that. It could be a visceral feeling. When I knew that my time was finished in Boulder, Colorado, After being there for 5.5 years, I just had this visceral feeling. And also that doors were not opening for me. I knew there was something else I was supposed to be doing. I knew change was coming. And I have learned to be with that change, to ask to be guided, and to wait until the messages come to me. And they come in a variety of ways, but that a visceral feeling in the solar plexus is one way. It just was an uncomfortable feeling when I thought about staying in the same place that I was doing the same things. It's like, no, there's something else ready to come through. And at that time, after living 5.5 years in Boulder, Colorado, I decided to just take what I call a clarity quest. I just get in my car and drive all over the West as long as it takes. And it took a couple weeks. And when I was at the summit coming down into Ashland, Oregon, I just had this knowing this is where I'm supposed to be. And if I hadn't moved there, I wouldn't be working for Neil. And I've been with him 21 years. So that opened up a whole new life for me. Your inner voice can also come maybe with a feeling of dread or caution. Pay attention when you have that feeling. It could be a song on the radio that says just what you need to hear at that time. It could be a recurring dream. It could just be a weird vibe like I got with Marika and Tim. Sometimes it doesn't make sense until we sit with that for a while. I think it's really important that for everyone that we connect with our guides. Everyone has guides. We don't necessarily see them or hear them, but they are there and they want to guide us. They want to help us, but they can't do that unless we ask. It's really important to ask every day. Please help me to meet whoever I am meant to meet today. Go wherever I'm meant to go today. Guide me into my next journey. We never know what's going to unfold, but when we ask, the answers will start to come, and they might be very, very subtle. We don't just hear them with our ears or see them with our eyes, but we can sense them if we can quiet ourselves and listen. Your guide might be what you call your guardian angel. It might be Jesus. It might be any of the ascended masters, Mother Mary. A lot of people have a guide that they don't really know who or what it is. They just know there's a presence there. It could be a deceased grandmother that you were close to, that you know is there helping you. So making sure, of course, that you protect yourself and you only draw in light beings, beings from the higher dimensions. And just asking for that inner guidance, and then learning to still yourself to hear whatever is coming through. Because right now we're in a very, I might say, a precarious time on this planet. So many things are happening that not everyone understands what's happening. And it's very easy to get drawn into the dark agenda that is being put on us if we allow ourselves to go that way. It's very important not to get drawn into that. There's so much drama, negative drama on the planet. And if you're one that listens to the news, you're being bombarded with it every day. We don't have to go there. And I feel that in these times, every one of us has a responsibility to disconnect from that darkness and to begin to listen to not only our inner guidance, but to only listen to things that are uplifting, that are going to be bringing us into this new earth, because the new earth is being created right now. And who's creating it? We are. It's the collective consciousness on this planet that will determine what comes in the future. And if we all buy into part of the collective consciousness that's immersed in all the horrible stuff that's going on, the wars, the control, the ain't it awful stories, all of that, then we're contributing to that. We want to contribute to the light. We want to contribute, at least I do, I'm assuming you do too, contribute to the uplifting of this planet. It's so important right now. So I think that one of the quotes that I didn't read that Eric Lindbergh said, yep, he said something I don't have here. in essence, that we all have inner greatness, we have inner wisdom, and we are meant to be acting that out. We are meant to be being that greatness and leaving a legacy of greatness. Now, his legacy was these teachings. What is your legacy? Every one of you is going to one day leave this planet and be shown this lifetime that you just lived. I will do this too. And we may see that we didn't live up to everything that we had planned when we came in. We all had a plan for our soul. We all came here with something to do, and it's not necessarily to do anything great that's going to change multitudes, or to be a best-selling author, or anything big. It can be just whatever we do in our life, but it's our legacy. And we all want to leave a legacy of greatness because that's what we're meant to do. And it's especially important in these times. So I want to close with a short reading from Johnny Patry. She is a Vedic astrologer. I don't follow astrology too much, but she sends out a monthly, whatever she would call it, a monthly reading about a particular month. And we're still in September. So this has to do with something with the important spiritual message for September. She said, listen to the guidance from within to receive all your answers. Don't let others persuade you when you know the truth from within. You'll be receiving direction and messages from that inner voice, and it's time to trust and sincerely use that intuition. Your intuition will not lead you astray, and you will grow by leaps and bounds. You will become stronger spiritually, which will help you understand the profound lessons being given to us at this powerful time in history. And this is a powerful time in history. She says you will be prepared to transcend the massive changes about to cleanse and transform our world. Keep watching, keep listening, keep preparing. Be ready to follow your inner guidance. So we are at this time in history in the process of ascension. You may have heard that from other teachers, perhaps not. The earth is moving from this third dimensional frequency that we are now in. We are lifting into the fourth and fifth dimension. And we don't necessarily see that. It's not going to happen suddenly, but it's in the process. The earth herself is raising in frequency, and we are. And so it's important that we stay grounded and yet remain focused on uplifting things, on raising our frequencies. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. Listen to wherever your guidance takes you. Even if you get in your car and you don't know where you're going, you'll end up in a perfect place for you. Thank you so much. Namaste.